All luxury hotels are fully booked," my mom bragged, clinking her champagne glass while my sister smirked. To them, I was the failure too busy chasing budget hotels to be invited. I didn't argue. I just pulled out my phone. Margaret, cancel the Whitmore family's presidential suite. Effective immediately. My dad's face went pale as the screens lit up with breaking news. My company, Elite Hotels, had just taken ownership of every five-star property in Aspen. And trust me, that was only the beginning. Before I dive in, hit like and tell me where you're watching from your stories. Remind me I'm not alone. I'm Claire Whitmore, 32 years old, and for as long as I can remember, Christmas with my family has never really been about love or togetherness. It was about appearances, about the kind of photos that ended up in glossy magazines or on my sister Maline's social feed, framed in perfect light with captions like "Family Goals." The truth. Those pictures were staged. Behind every smiling face was a knife, usually pointed at me. I grew up in a house where success was defined in one narrow way, my father's way. He built a real estate empire out of sheer grit and money. He measured worth in square footage and property value. My mother learned to echo his words, and Maline, my older sister, became their perfect protege. She wore their approval like a crown, floating through every holiday dressed in designer gowns, while the spotlight fell squarely on her. Me, I was the afterthought, the one who didn't follow the plan. When I left to study hospitality instead of business development, my father shook his head like I'd just burned down the family name. "Hotels are service, Claire. Service is beneath us," he told me once, a glass of scotch sweating in his hand. My mother agreed, and Maline made sure to remind me every chance she got. But I stayed quiet. I watched. I worked. I let them believe I was barely scraping by, managing what they called budget hotels, as if I were wasting my life making beds and folding towels. They didn't know that those so-called budget hotels were the foundation of something much bigger. They didn't know the hours I spent in airport lounges, with contracts spread out in front of me, or the nights I worked through Christmas Eve, drawing up acquisition plans while they clinked glasses and sang carols. And here's the thing about being underestimated: it hurts, yes, but it also gives you cover. They never suspected me because they never respected me. That December night at Aspen Lodge wasn't just another family gathering. It was their stage, the Whitmore's annual spectacle where guests drove in from Denver and Vail just to be seen. Maline had orchestrated the decor down to imported pine garlands and crystal flutes etched with our crest. My name wasn't on the guest list, of course. Why would it be? In their eyes, I didn't belong in the glow of chandeliers or by the crackling fire, but standing there in the lobby watching the snow swirl against the glass, I knew something they didn't. In less than an hour, the entire script of our family Christmas would flip upside down. The Aspen Lodge glittered that night like a snow globe come to life. Strings of golden lights looped across the vaulted beams, and a choir sang carols near the fireplace. From the shadows of the grand lobby, I watched my family move as if they owned the place. My mother waved off staff with a sharp flick of her hand, never once offering so much as a thank you. Maline floated in wearing a gown the color of champagne, her designer scarf draped, just so, whispering to cousins about how stressful it was to coordinate an event of this magnitude. No one noticed me. That was the story of my life. I heard Aunt Sarah ask casually, "Did you hear from Claire?" She was pouring herself eggnog, maybe expecting to hear I was running late. My mother's reply cut sharper than any winter wind. "Oh, she won't be joining us. Every hotel is fully booked. Honestly, she should have reserved a room months ago." Laughter, smiles, a toast raised in mock sympathy. My sister leaned in, lowering her voice, but not enough to hide the venom. Still chasing her little hotel project, she said, savoring the words like candy, "Imagine spending Christmas in some roadside motel." I stayed rooted to the marble floor, the phone heavy in my palm. The irony almost made me laugh. For 5 years, I had lived behind the mask of hospitality consulting, letting them assume I was piecing together a modest career. What they never knew was that the mask hid an empire: elite hotels, the most ambitious, luxury hospitality group in the world. Property by property, I had built it in silence, using shell companies to hide my name. While they mocked me, I was signing billion-dollar contracts. But old wounds still ached. My father's voice from years ago echoed in my head: real estate builds legacies. Hotels serve coffee. The disgust in his eyes was the same one he used on bellboys who dared to open his car door too slowly. That night at Aspen, the same disdain painted his features as he raised a glass of scotch. "At least Claire is employed," he muttered, as if that were some consolation prize. Though managing budget hotels is hardly a career, I felt something shift inside me then, a line snapping. For years I had kept my head down, waiting, building, letting their ignorance be my armor. But standing there, wrapped in pine-scented air and the sound of their laughter, I realized I didn't want armor anymore. I wanted the truth laid bare, and I had the perfect stage. Because while they toasted to my absence, my phone buzzed again. One more confirmation from my legal team: the transfer of Aspen Lodge, their crown jewel, their stage, would finalize at midnight. They thought I was invisible, but in a matter of minutes I would step out of the shadows, and for the first time they'd have no choice but to see me. Midnight came quietly, like a secret only I knew. Snow drifted across the windows, muffling the sound of the carolers outside. Inside the Aspen Lodge ballroom, my family basked in their own glow firelight champagne applause from friends who believed the Whitmores defined success. I let them enjoy it for one last moment. Then I stepped forward. My heels struck the marble floor sharp enough to turn heads. Conversations faltered. My mother's eyes widened as if she'd seen a ghost. "Claire," she gasped, "how did you get in here? I didn't bother with pleasantries." I lifted my phone voice, calm and deliberate. "Margaret," I said, "cancel the Whitmore family's presidential suite, effective immediately." The silence was deafening. My father lowered his glass, confusion and irritation darkening his face. "What is this nonsense?" he demanded. Malene's laugh came out shaky, forced. "She's joking," she told the cousins, though, her knuckles whitened against her glass. But then the lobby screens flickered alive, pulling every gaze in the room. Breaking news banners glowed across the flat screens: elite hotels acquires Aspen Lodge and 20 luxury properties, worldwide. A photo appeared me standing before one of my flagship hotels, name bold beneath the headline: Claire Whitmore, CEO and founder of Elite Hotels. My father's scotch slipped from his fingers, crashing against the floor. My mother's perfect smile collapsed into shock. Malene fumbled with her phone, scrolling through headline after headline, each one worse than the last. "All luxury hotels are fully booked," she whispered, as if trying to rewrite reality. "Not anymore," I answered, "because I own them." Every five-star property in Aspen now operates under Elite Hotels. The room erupted in murmurs. Guests who had once sneered at me now stared with a mix of awe and unease. My family stood frozen in the center, exposed under the glittering lights of the Christmas they had thought belonged to them. I met my father's eyes, steady and unflinching. "You said hotels don't build legacies. You were wrong." It wasn't anger that filled me in that moment, it was clarity. Years of ridicule, dismissal, exclusion, all leading to this night. My counterattack wasn't a shout or a fight. It was simple, undeniable truth displayed for the entire world to see. The Whitmore family's perfect holiday collapsed in an instant. And for the first time, I wasn't the one left standing in the shadows. The room felt colder, though the fire roared behind the iron grate. Crystal chandeliers glittered above, but every eye was locked on me. For the first time in years, I wasn't invisible. My mother clutched her pearls, her painted nails trembling. My father's jaw clenched so hard I thought the glass in his hand might shatter. And Malene, my flawless sister, looked as though she'd been stripped bare in front of the entire ballroom. I let the silence stretch, let them feel it. Then my phone buzzed again. Another notification flashed across the lobby screens: Elite Hotels stock surges on $8 billion Aspen acquisition. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Some of the Whitmore's oldest friends, business partners, neighbors, society figures turned their heads away from my parents, suddenly embarrassed to be standing beside them. My father finally broke the silence. "This is absurd," he growled. "You can't possibly— I cut in, my voice sharper than I expected. And I did. At midnight, the Aspen Lodge became elite property, along with every luxury resort in town. You mocked me for years, called me a failure for managing hotels. But tonight you'll sleep in a roadside motel while the world sees me for what I am, the woman who built an empire you couldn't even imagine." Maline's champagne glass slipped from her fingers, the crash echoing through the ballroom. She scrambled for her phone, scrolling frantically, her lips moving as she read the headlines. No, this can't be." "It is," I said, stepping closer. "And every guest in this lodge now answers to my company. That means your suite, your annual Christmas throne no longer belongs to you." My mother's voice cracked. "Claire, you can't do this. It's Christmas." I almost laughed. "You never cared if I was alone on Christmas. You never noticed when I spent holidays working, saving, building. Why should tonight be any different? Actions have consequences." The murmur of guests grew louder. A senator whispered into his wife's ear, reporters scrambled to get video footage, and the local mayor appeared at the edge of the room, stunned, as if history had just rerouted itself before his eyes. I turned back to my family. "You said service is beneath us. That hotels aren't real business. Tell me, how does it feel now, knowing the people you treated as invisible now stand above you?" My father's face flushed crimson. He stepped forward, pointing at me like he had authority. "You ungrateful," I didn't let him finish. I raised my phone again. "Security escort the Whitmore family from the presidential suite. Effective immediately." Gasps, murmurs. The music faltered. Then 2 elite staff members in immaculate uniforms stepped through the crowd. They didn't hesitate. They'd been briefed. And in that moment, the symbolism wasn't lost on anyone. The daughter, once excluded from family Christmas, now had the power to exclude her own parents and sister. My mother sputtered. "You can't possibly mean—" "Oh, I do," I said calmly. "Because Elite Hotels has a strict policy. Guests who disrespect hospitality staff are permanently blacklisted. And you, every single one of you, qualify." The words landed like a hammer blow. My sister lunged toward me, her perfect facade cracking. "Claire, please," she begged, her voice thin. "We didn't know. If we had known, we would have." I held her gaze, remembering every snide remark, every smirk when I walked into a room, every Christmas I spent alone because my family thought I wasn't worth an invitation. "That's exactly the point," I said. "You didn't know, because you never cared to look past your own reflection." Behind me, the screen cycled through images of elite properties. Beachfront villas in Bali, glass towers in New York, snow-covered chalets in Switzerland. My name glowed beneath every headline. I walked to the center of the room, feeling the weight of every stare. 5 years ago, you told me I was wasting my time, that managing hotels was beneath a Whitmore. You mocked me, excluded me, treated me like nothing. Tonight you will leave this lodge as guests with no room, no power, no standing. And tomorrow, the world will know exactly why. The security team waited at the edge of the ballroom, eyes steady. My father glanced around, realizing no ally would step forward. Even his oldest partners were already recalculating loyalties, eager to curry favor with me instead. He tried one last time. "Princess," he said softly, using the nickname he hadn't called me in years. His voice wavered. "We didn't know." I looked at him, the man who taught me to measure worth in property deeds and bottom lines. "That's the problem," I said quietly. "You never wanted to know." The carolers outside began another song, their voices faint but clear. Inside, my family stood shattered in the middle of their perfect Christmas. Guests whispered, phones flashed, reporters scribbled notes. The Whitmores, once untouchable, had been brought down not by rivals or bad investments, but by the daughter they dismissed. I turned to security and nodded. Show them to the Mountain View Motel. It's the only accommodation left during peak season. The humiliation was total. Malene gasped. My mother looked like she might faint. My father's shoulders sagged, years of pride collapsing under the weight of reality. As they were led toward the exit, I called out, my voice carrying through the room. And Malene, next time you laugh at someone in hospitality, remember this. They might just own the building. The crowd erupted, not in laughter, but in applause. Not for them. For me. I stood there in the glow of the chandeliers, finally seen, finally heard. And for the first time in my life, Christmas belonged to me. But as satisfying as it was, I knew this was only the beginning. My family's downfall had just begun. The morning after felt like stepping into a new world. Snow blanketed the mountains in silence, but inside Aspen Lodge, everything buzzed with life. Reporters camped outside news crews, filmed the decorated lobby, and guests approached my staff with curiosity, eager to say they had been there the night history was made. I sat in my new office on the top floor overlooking the peaks I had claimed not just as a view, but as a legacy. My phone lit up, non-stop calls from investors, messages from heads of state, offers I never imagined I'd receive. Overnight, Claire Whitmore wasn't the family disappointment anymore. I was the face of a hospitality empire worth billions. Meanwhile, my family had spent Christmas Eve in the Mountain View Motel, stripped of the suite they once flaunted. The irony wasn't lost on me. For years, they mocked the very industry that now controlled their fate. And now, for the first time, they felt what it was like to be on the other side of that disdain. But revenge wasn't the whole story. It never was. This was about justice, about finally proving that respect matters more than appearances. I thought of the housekeepers, the bellhops, the front desk clerks who built elite hotels alongside me. They weren't invisible. Neither was I. For my family, the fallout had just begun. For me, the future was wide open, and this time I was holding the keys. In the end, I learned something simple. Family can betray you, dismiss you, even erase you from their table. But their rejection doesn't define your worth. Respect, dignity, and persistence do. My parents, my sister, they lost their Christmas throne because they never saw the people who made it possible. I built my own empire on those very people, and it saved me. If this story hit you the way it hit me, drop a comment below. Tell me if you've ever had to fight for respect in your own family. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Your support reminds me I'm not alone.
My name is Paula Ellison, and I'm 27 years old. Sometimes when I look back, it feels like my life split in two before Patrick and after Patrick. I first met Patrick about 5 years ago back in college. I was buried in computer science assignments, pulling all-nighters with code that refused to compile. He was in the art building across campus, sketching logos and poster designs, always surrounded by scraps of paper and the smell of charcoal. We were both young, broke, and a little lost, but with him I felt a spark. From the start, we clicked. He made me laugh. During late-night coffee runs, I helped him fix his glitchy laptop, and before long, we were inseparable. 2 years in, we moved into a small but cozy apartment in the city. It wasn't fancy peeling paint, a leaky faucet in the kitchen, but it was ours. Patrick's income from freelance gigs was spotty, so I covered most of the rent and utilities. I didn't resent it. I told myself, this is what you do when you believe in someone. You carry them until they can stand on their own. When Patrick lost his biggest client one year, I even picked up extra freelance coding projects just to keep us afloat. I skipped a promotion opportunity because it would have meant relocating, and I didn't want to uproot him when his career was just beginning. At the time, I told myself it was love. That's what love required, sacrifice. Our relationship wasn't perfect, but it felt real. And physically, things were good. No, they were better than good. Movie nights curled up together, spontaneous weekend trips where we'd hike all day and collapse tangled up in some cheap Airbnb bed. I can still picture one particular weekend, a small cabin in the mountains. We laughed in front of a fireplace until our faces hurt, clothes scattered across the floor. It was messy, passionate, mutual. That was us, or so I thought. But about 8 months ago, something shifted. It started quietly, the way a storm builds on the horizon before you see the lightning. Patrick pulled away in small ways. When I reached for his hand on the couch, he stiffened. Our bedtime routines grew awkward. His kisses turned into quick pecks on the cheek, and when I tried for more, he brushed me off. "I'm just tired," he'd mutter, rolling over. At first, I chalked it up to stress. His freelance work was picking up and he was pitching to bigger agencies. I figured he was overwhelmed, maybe even insecure, and I tried to be patient. I gave him space, kept telling myself, "This is just a phase, don't push." But in the back of my mind, a whisper was growing louder. Something wasn't right. And soon I'd realize that the distance between us wasn't about stress, it was about secrets. The night he finally said it, I remember exactly where we were. Our bedroom was dim, the hum of the city outside the only sound. I was scrolling aimlessly on my phone while Patrick sat stiffly on the edge of the bed like he was rehearsing a speech. "Paula," he said, his voice calm, deliberate, but with that sharp edge he used when he'd already made up his mind. I set my phone down, sensing the weight in his tone. "What's wrong?" He stared at his hands for a beat, then looked me straight in the eyes. "I've been thinking a lot, and I realize I'm asexual. Physical intimacy, it disgusts me now. The thought of touching like that, it makes my skin crawl." For a moment, I couldn't even process what I was hearing. My heart thudded against my ribs. What I whispered. "Patrick, we've been together for years. We've been fine, great even. What changed?" He crossed his arms defensive as if I was attacking him. "People change, Paula. Or maybe I was always this way and I just didn't have the words for it. But every time you try to start something, it feels like a chore. Your hands on me. It makes me feel trapped." His words landed like a blade. Trapped. Disgust. Words I never thought would be aimed at me. "I didn't realize I was making you uncomfortable all this time," I murmured, guilt rushing in before anger had a chance. And just like that, his tone sharpened, triumphant almost. "See? That's the problem. You're making this about yourself. I'm being honest with you, Paula, and now you're painting me as the bad guy. If you really cared about me, you'd respect this, not twist it into your ego or your needs." I felt myself shrinking inside, folding into guilt. Had I been selfish, blind? All those nights I thought we were close, was I actually hurting him? That night I lay on the couch, staring at the ceiling, replaying every memory, every kiss, every touch. They all felt poisoned now. The following weeks were a blur of research. I dove into articles, online forums, even joined a support group for partners of asexual people. I told myself, maybe I can adapt. Maybe we'll find a new rhythm. I suggested couples therapy, but Patrick dismissed it with a wave of his hand. "You're overreacting. This is who I am now. Accept it." So I tried. I planned low-pressure dates, walks in the park, cooking together, no pressure for intimacy. But even hugs felt forced. He'd mutter about personal space. Meanwhile, his phone never stopped buzzing. Messages, late-at-night calls he took in another room. When I leaned closer, he'd angle the screen away. "You're so needy," he snapped one night when I asked who he was texting. "This is why I feel suffocated. You can't just let me breathe." I told myself it was my fault again, that I was failing him, that if I just gave him more space, more patience, more understanding, maybe things would go back to how they once were. But deep down, the whisper inside me was turning into a roar. Something wasn't adding up. It happened on an ordinary Tuesday, the kind of day you don't expect your entire life to come crashing down. I had left work early, wanting to surprise Patrick. His favorite pad thai, still warm in the paper bag, steamed up the passenger seat as I drove home. I remember smiling, thinking maybe this small gesture could remind him of us, of before. When I stepped into the apartment, it was unusually quiet. Patrick wasn't home yet. His laptop sat open on the kitchen table, screen glowing in the dim light. I wasn't snooping, I swear I wasn't. I only meant to close it so I could set the food down. Then it happened. A notification popped up in the corner of the screen. From someone named Marissa last night was incredible. Can't wait for round 2. My heart stopped. For a moment, I just stood there, frozen, hoping I'd misread. But the message blinked back at me, cruel and undeniable. My hand trembled as I clicked it open. What I found wasn't a single message. It was an entire thread. Photos. Explicit details. Patrick gushing about passion fireworks, how she made him feel alive. And Marissa wasn't the only one. There were others. A coworker named Ryan, a woman from some design conference he'd attended. Dates overlapped with the exact weeks he'd claimed intimacy with me disgusted him. I scrolled back further, nausea rising like bile. Then I saw the words that burned themselves into my brain. Paula totally bought the ace excuse. Easy cover. Sex with her was boring anyway, too vanilla. With you, it's fireworks every time. I dropped into a chair, my hands gripping the table, so hard my knuckles turned white. Every memory, The cabin in the mountains, lazy Sunday mornings, tangled together, even the moments I'd thought were special. It all twisted into something grotesque. Had he been laughing at me the entire time? By the time the front door clicked open, I felt hollowed out. Patrick walked in carrying shopping bags, humming to himself. He stopped short when he saw my face, the laptop closed beside me. "What's wrong?" he asked lightly, though his eyes darted to the computer. "You look like someone died." I swallowed hard. I saw the messages, Patrick. My voice was calm, too calm. All of them. His face paled, but only for a flicker. Then came the smirk, the roll of his eyes. "You went through my stuff." "Wow, Paula, that's a violation." "A violation." My voice cracked louder now. "You've been sleeping with multiple women while telling me I make your skin crawl. You lied. You made me feel like a monster for wanting the relationship we had." He dropped the bags on the counter, crossing his arms. "Okay, fine. You caught me. But let's be real, this is on you too. Our sex life was stale. You never wanted to try anything new. You were boring. I needed excitement." I blinked at him, stunned. "Excitement. That's your excuse?" He shrugged, casual, as if we were debating what movie to watch. "These women, they make me feel alive. You don't. I only said the asexual thing because I knew you'd freak out if I told you the truth. I was protecting your feelings, Paula." I laughed then, bitter and sharp. "Protecting me? You gaslit me into therapy. You made me question my worth. That's not protection, Patrick. That's betrayal." He leaned against this counter, smirk curling on his lips. "Betrayal. Dramatic much. People evolve. You're reliable, sure, but you're like an old sweater, comfortable but boring. I deserve passion, and clearly you can't give me that." I stood my chair, scraping against the floor. My voice was steady now, steel under the heartbreak. "If that's how you see it, fine. We're done. I'll help you pack tonight." For the first time, he blinked, caught off guard. "That's it. No yelling, no begging." "No," I said, already pulling empty boxes from the closet. "You made your choice. You don't get to have both me and your fireworks." That night we packed in silence. He left with half the furniture, his clothes, his art supplies. By morning he was gone. And for the first time in years, so was my illusion of us. The morning after Patrick left the apartment felt like a ghost town. Half the shelves were empty, his posters gone from the walls, his scent still clinging faintly to the couch cushions. I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee growing cold in my hands, staring at the hollow spaces he'd carved out by leaving. I thought I would cry, but instead there was just silence. Not peace. Not yet. Just the kind of silence that presses on your chest, makes you notice every creak in the floorboards, every tick of the clock. The betrayal replayed in my head on a loop, his words boring old sweater. I deserve passion echoed like poison. I'd given up promotions, extra hours of sleep nights out. With friends, all so he could have stability. And in return, he mocked me to strangers. Still, I didn't lash out. I didn't trash his name online or send angry texts. Instead, I started small. I changed the locks, canceled our joint streaming accounts, deleted his contact, though my thumb hovered over his name longer than I'd like to admit. But nights were the hardest. I'd lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, haunted by questions. Was it me? Was I really that boring? Had I missed every red flag? The guilt gnawed at me, threatening to turn me inside out. It was Maya, my best friend since high school, who pulled me out of that spiral. One evening she came over with takeout and a bottle of wine. She didn't ask questions at first, just sat with me in the mess. After a while, she started shoving furniture around, saying, "If you're going to heal, you can't live in a shrine to him." So we rearranged the apartment until the rooms felt different, mine again. We pushed the couch against the opposite wall, moved the desk into the bedroom, bought new sheets. It wasn't much, but every change was a small rebellion, a way of saying, "This is my space now, not his." Work became my anchor. I threw myself into projects, volunteering for tasks that scared me before. A month later, my manager handed me a bonus check, smiling like I'd finally come into my own. I also joined a gym. At first, it was just to kill time to avoid the hollow apartment. But soon, the rhythm of it, the sweat, the muscle ache gave me back. A body I'd forgotten I owned. Every drop of sweat felt like purging his voice from my head. Still, the ache of loneliness lingered. I'd catch myself scrolling through old photos, memories of road trips and laughter, trying to reconcile that Patrick with the stranger who'd looked me in the eye and said I disgusted him. Sometimes guilt crept in like a shadow. Maybe if I'd been more adventurous. Maybe if I hadn't worked so much. Maybe if I'd been enough. But then the other voice, the one growing louder, would whisper, "No, he lied. He manipulated. This isn't your burden to carry." Weeks stretched into months. Slowly, the silence in my apartment shifted. It stopped feeling suffocating. It started feeling peaceful. No more walking on eggshells. No more apologizing for wanting love. I wasn't whole yet, but I was breathing again. And just when I thought the worst was over, I got a call that changed everything. Paula Maya said, her voice tight. "Have you seen this? It's about Patrick. It's all over social media." My stomach sank. Whatever Patrick had done, the world was about to know it too. Maya's voice was trembling through the phone. "It's all over the design community page. Someone posted everything." I pulled up the link. She sent, my hands shaking. The page was flooded with screenshots, private messages between Patrick and one of his affairs, a coworker named Liam. His username was visible enough that nobody questioned it. The texts were raw, explicit, the kind of details that leave no room for denial. One thread stopped me cold. Paula bought the Ace story hook, line, and sinker. Told her intimacy disgusts me. LOL only with her. You're the real deal. With you, it's fireworks. My stomach turned, but this time not from guilt. From fury. From vindication. The post spread like wildfire. Comments poured in, people tagging Patrick's agency clients, even mutual acquaintances. Some defended him for half a heartbeat, but the evidence was undeniable. By the end of the week, Patrick's professional world collapsed. His agency issued a statement about unprofessional conduct and fired him. Clients he'd been courting cut ties. Word spread fast. Nobody wanted to work with a designer known more for scandals than skill. Friends distanced themselves too. Group chats we once shared lit up with debates, and most people sided against him. "He's toxic," one person wrote. "He gaslit Paula and cheated like it was a sport." I didn't post anything, didn't comment, didn't even like or share. I just watched from a distance as the truth carved through the lies he'd built. Irony dripped from every headline, every whisper Patrick had chased. Passion, excitement, validation, and ended up with nothing. No job, no income, no friends he could count on. Maya sent me updates in disbelief. "He's couch surfing. His parents are furious, but they bailed him out once already. Word is he's broke." I should have felt triumphant, but what I actually felt was something quieter, a strange calm. For the first time since he'd dropped the asexual bombshell on me, I knew none of this was my fault. He had made his choices, and now the world could finally see him for who he really was. But I also knew Patrick. Desperation made him dangerous. He wasn't the type to disappear quietly into the shadows. And I was right, because within days of his life unraveling, he came crawling back. The first message slipped through my inbox 2 nights after his firing. Subject line, "We need to talk." From Patrick. "Paula, this is all a huge misunderstanding. Please call me. I need you." I didn't respond. Deleted it without finishing the paragraph. The next day, a new number lit up my phone. "Paula, it's me. I'm sorry you saw those messages. I was confused." "Okay. Confused about my identity. Can we meet? I miss us." I blocked the number, but the silence only provoked him. Within a week, he was outside my building, buzzing my intercom like a man possessed. I peeked through the peephole. His hair was messy, his eyes red, shoulders hunched. "Paula," he shouted, "open up, please. I've lost everything, my job, my friends. Don't do this to me too. You always said you'd support me. Don't abandon me now." His voice cracked, part desperation, part accusation, the same tone he used when he wanted to guilt me into staying quiet. I stood there frozen until the buzzing stopped. Later that night, he left a voicemail. "I know I messed up, but remember how good we were? The way we laughed." I was going through a phase exploring myself. "But I see now. You were the only real thing in my life. Please don't shut me out." I listened once, then I deleted it. He didn't stop there. His sister, who never liked me much, messaged me on social media. "Hey, Paula, Patrick's a wreck because of you. That Liam guy ruined his reputation, but you're no saint either. You drove him away with your neediness. Be decent and talk to him. He needs you." My reply was curt, "Not my family anymore. Lose my contact. Block." Then a mutual friend, Tom, called me during lunch. "Paula, come on. He's crashing at his parents, broke as hell. He says he realizes now you were the stable one. Give him a chance to explain." I pinched the bridge of my nose. "Tom, he cheated, lied, humiliated me. There's nothing to explain." Harsh Tom muttered, "People make mistakes." "Then let him make them far away from me," I snapped and hung up. But Patrick wasn't done. 2 weeks later, he found me at the gym. I was heading to my car when I heard his voice behind me. Paula, wait. I froze, then turned. He looked thinner, pale, his desperation worn on his face like a mask. I see now how wrong I was, he said quickly. The whole asexual thing, it was a cop-out. I was scared of commitment, of getting stuck. But losing you, it's killing me. Please, just coffee. Let me explain. I shook my head, walking past him. No, Patrick. We're past that. His tone cracked from pleading into bitterness. Fine, be that way. But you'll regret it when I'm back on top and you're still alone in that sad little apartment. I didn't even look back. That night, the voicemails turned ugly. Burner numbers with his voice spitting venom. You're enjoying this, aren't you? Watching me suffer while you play the victim. I gave you years, Paula. Now you think you're too good for me. You're cold, heartless. Hope your next guy sees what you really are. Even his mother emailed me. Paula, you have a responsibility. Patrick is depressed, not eating. Be the bigger person and help him. You knew him better than anyone. I archived it without answering. Every message, every visit, every attempt peeled away his last mask. This wasn't love. It was entitlement. A belief that I would always be his safety net no matter how many times he cut the rope. But I was done, and I wasn't alone anymore. Because while Patrick was busy unraveling, my life was quietly filling with something new, someone new. 6 months after Patrick walked out of my life, I stood on a rooftop strung with lights, laughter echoing in the summer night. It was Maya's engagement party, one of the first big social events I'd allowed myself to attend since everything fell apart. I didn't come alone. Elias was with me. We'd met at a local coding boot camp where I volunteered him a graphic novelist guest lecturing on storytelling. He was steady in a way Patrick never was, patient, grounded, with a quiet wit that disarmed me. When he held my hand that night, it felt natural, not staged. No games. I should have known Patrick would be there. Maya had warned me gently that he'd RSVP'd through mutual acquaintances. But don't worry, she whispered. You don't owe him anything. Still, when I spotted him across the rooftop, thinner, hollow-eyed, a forced smile glued to his face, I felt my chest tighten. He looked out of place, clutching a drink, scanning the crowd until his gaze landed on me. Our eyes locked. His expression cracked, desperation seeping through. He made a beeline straight for us. Paula, he breathed when he reached me, ignoring Elias completely. His voice was low, urgent. Thank God you're here. I've been trying to reach you for months. I stood tall, Elias's hand still in mine. Patrick. My tone was flat, giving him nothing. He leaned closer, words spilling out fast. Everything's falling apart. My job, my friends. I have nothing left. And I realize now you were the best thing I had. I was stupid, confused. The cheating, it was a mistake, a way to feel something. But I need you back. We can start fresh. Therapy. Whatever it takes. Please. His words, once a weapon, now sounded hollow. I thought of all the nights I'd cried on that couch, the emails, the guilt trips, the venom in his voicemails. I remembered how he had said intimacy with me was disgusting, how he'd mocked me to strangers. Elias squeezed my hand, grounding me. I looked Patrick in the eye, my voice steady, sharp enough to cut through the music behind us. Do you remember telling me I was boring? That I was like an old sweater, comfortable but worthless? Do you remember saying I disgusted you? Patrick flinched, but I didn't stop. You rewrote our history with lies. You wanted passion, excitement, fireworks. Well, you got it. And now you're standing here asking me to be your lifeline after you burned me to the ground. He swallowed hard, eyes darting to Elias before snapping back to me. But history matters, Paula. We had years together. You can't just throw that away. History. I shook my head. You destroyed it. You don't get to use the past as leverage when you twisted it to suit yourself. I don't owe you anything. For the first time, I saw it, his mask crumbling. Anger flickered in his eyes, his mouth twisting. Irrelevant. That's what you think I am, after everything. Yes, I said simply, irrelevant. And with that, I turned away. Elias and I walked back into the crowd, his arm brushing mine, steady and warm. Behind us, I could feel Patrick's stare like a weight, but it no longer touched me. He was no longer my storm, just a shadow fading under the rooftop lights. The weeks after Maya's rooftop party felt different, like someone had finally opened a window in a suffocating room. For months, Patrick's presence had lingered like smoke through emails, through gossip, through the echo of his voice in my head. But that night, when I walked away from him for the last time, the air shifted. He was no longer a looming shadow, just a memory stripped of power. Life didn't magically become perfect, but it became mine. Work flourished. The promotion I'd once sacrificed came back around, and this time I didn't hesitate. My manager handed me new responsibilities with a grin. "I knew you had this in you, Paula," she said. And for the first time in years, I believed it too. Outside of work, I found myself pouring into things that once scared me. I signed up to mentor young coders at the boot camp where I'd first met Elias. Standing in front of a room of eager students, I realized how far I'd come from the woman who let someone else define her worth to someone carving out her own voice. And Elias, he wasn't a grand gesture kind of man. He didn't shower me with fireworks or dizzying promises. What he offered was steadier, quieter an arm around my shoulders. After a long day laughter over burnt pancakes on Sunday mornings, someone who didn't make me question if I was enough. With him, I learned that love isn't about sacrifice until you're hollow. It's about building something where both people can stand tall. One evening, sitting on my balcony as the city buzzed below, Elias handed me a sketchbook. Inside were pages he'd drawn of me laughing with students at the boot camp, curled up with my laptop, even rearranging furniture with Maya. Moments I thought were ordinary, but through his eyes they were worth capturing. "You don't realize how strong you are," he said softly. And for once I didn't argue. Patrick faded further with every passing week. Friends told me he'd burned through couches, that his reputation was beyond repair. But I didn't check, didn't gloat. He had his story, and I had mine. The difference was mine was moving forward. Sometimes I think back to the girl who sat on her kitchen floor the night she discovered those messages, shaking with disbelief. She thought her world was ending. She didn't know that endings can be beginnings in disguise. I do now. And if Patrick ever crosses my mind, it's not with rage or longing. It's with the quiet certainty that I survived him. That I came out not just intact, but stronger. Because love isn't about fireworks that burn out. It's about the steady glow that lasts. And I finally found mine.